think we also can train our hearts to more quickly recognize, okay, that no, that rejection, that seeming delay in the story playing out, there's a reason for that. And whatever the waiting, the molding, the refining that's happening in us is necessary for wherever God's taking us next.
That's right.
And if I'm willing to go, okay, that I'll just run with rejection, that no that I received, that is a gift of clarity that you're giving me, right? Because that closed door means that you're orchestrating something else for me.
Welcome to the Sacred Hustle podcast, where we embrace the beauty of balancing purpose, peace, and pursuit in a faith-filled life. This is the place where quiet moments of reflection meet bold steps of obedience, and where stories of resilience, grace, and unwavering hope come alive. Whether you're here to reignite your purpose, find encouragement, or simply pause in the midst of life's hustle, you're in the right place. Let's lean into the sacred together, because every step of your journey matters. Welcome back, friends, to another episode of the Sacred Hustle podcast, where we gather to pursue purpose with peace, passion, and a whole lot of faith. Today's episode is so special to me because I get to welcome not only a powerhouse of wisdom and encouragement, but a dear friend I deeply adore and admire, the beautiful Rebecca George. Rebecca is the author of the brand new book, You're Not Too Late, Trusting God's Timing in a Hurry Up World. And let me just tell you, friends, this message is so needed right now, especially for the women in the Sacred Hustle community, the dreamers, the builders, the nurturers, and the faithful ones who sometimes wonder if their moment has passed or if they're behind. Rebecca is also the founder of the Radical Radiance podcast, which is just a beautiful community, and she's a fierce encourager of women who are stepping into their God-given calling. Her words are soaked in scripture, honesty, and hope, and her ability to just remind us that God is never late is like a balm to the hurried and wearied heart. So whether you're in a season of waiting, wondering, or walking in obedience, today's conversation is for you. And I'm thrilled to share this space with Rebecca. And I just know you're going to leave this episode feeling seen, strengthened, and reminded that your timing is not too late. It's right on time in God's hands. So without further ado, I just want to welcome my beautiful friend Rebecca, and let's go right ahead and dive in. Hey friends, I believe that words are so powerful. And the more we learn and discover the meaning of words and how they can be used in our life, that there's so much more than things that we think about or receive. But words actually have so much depth and meaning. If you would like to learn how to listen and how to speak with more intention, I have created a free devotional guide for you, friends, where we dive into scriptures and illustrations and examples of how we can use our words more intentionally in everyday life. I promise you, this will inspire you to think differently about how you speak. It will encourage you to think about how you can live out words in a beautiful way in your life. Click the link in the show notes or go to rachelerp.com/freebies. And you can actually download this free guide for yourself. It is a beautiful devotional that comes straight from my heart, and I wanted to share this free resource with you today. I hope you'll check it out. Once again, the link is in the show notes, or you can go to rachelerp.com, and Earp is spelled EARP, like Wyatt Earp, rachelerp.com/freebies, and get the guide for yourself, friends. Now back to the show. Well, Rebecca George, I am so excited to have this episode that we can create together on the Sacred Hustle podcast. We are good friends, and you have been on my platforms before, but this is a new community for just you, and the message of a new book that just came out called You're Not Too Late, which I cannot wait to get into. I've been literally over here jumping for joy because I know how special you are. I know the heart and soul that you put into your writing and your book. So thank you for coming on today. I cannot wait to talk about this message and learn a little bit of the behind the scenes of what cultivated your desire to create this book. So let's start with Rebecca, just really quick for those who don't know you. Tell us your sweet little story and your background because I just love it.
Sure. Well, Rachel, I'm so grateful for you. You have championed this book so much, and I'm just grateful for our conversation. I know it's going to be really fun today. So, a little bit of, I guess, a few of the hats that I wear. I'm an author and a speaker and a podcaster as well. I have a show called Radical Radiance, and my heart really is to write resources and have conversations that point women back to what it looks like to radiate the heart of Jesus in all that we do, our life, our work, our relationships. I lead a retreat that you came to last year and you're coming to again this fall,
Yes.
which is going to be so fun in East Tennessee, where me and my husband live, if you can't tell by my accent. Uh, that is called Camp for Creatives, which is where I gather just fellow authors, speakers, people who do what we do to just rest and mastermind together, learn from one another. So lots of hats that I wear, but I've kind of steering us towards the conversation we'll have about the book. I've been married to my husband almost 6 years, which feels wild. We got married right before the pandemic, and I had been a bridesmaid 12 times when I married Dustin, and had just walked through quite a long season of wondering how God would provide and would I ever find my person. And I think part of that is what God used to kind of refine in me this desire to have the conversation about longing and what do we do with it. And so I think what's been interesting is how many seasons of life longing touches, right?
Yeah.
It's not just a conversation for the single woman or the woman walking through infertility or desiring to reconcile a broken relationship or grow in her career or become a grandparent. Like, it's for all of us. Every woman I know feels too late for her life. And so I love just having that conversation of how we can experience joy and hope even in the meanwhile.
Oh, I love that so much. And I really appreciate too the fact that you tie it into the so many different seasons of life where we can find the waiting. And
Yeah.
oftentimes we think when we're in that waiting period, if I can just get to this event or this milestone or this dream can come true or this goal, then I'm just going to be happy and there will be no more waiting. I've arrived, I've achieved the thing.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then life continues to unfold. And then so many times we find ourselves right back in that same zone. And that
Yeah.
can be very discouraging for us sometimes because waiting is hard. And beyond the fact that waiting can be hard, I think the whole other realm of the waiting is when we feel like maybe we've waited too long and we've missed the boat. Like
Yeah.
it's too late now, or the pressures that society can put on us, or even our own. Like we can
Totally.
oftentimes put those pressures on ourselves that we got to hurry up and just do this thing, or
Yeah.
the timeline. So I'd like to talk a little bit about the timeline and how oftentimes God's pace doesn't match our own pace. How
Yeah.
do we reconcile those two things and get through that time in a season where we can still thrive and feel
Yeah.
fulfilled while we're still waiting?
Yeah, totally. I mean, I would first say, like, if you are still drawing breath, God is not done with you. And so many of our stories just have not played out how we would have chosen or how we would have written the story if we had the pen to our lives as God does.
Yeah.
And so we all have to kind of reckon with that. And you kind of said it a minute ago, but there's this lie. I call it the lie of if only in the book. Like,
Mhm.
if I would only get this, then I would be happy. If I would only get married or have kids or my business be successful in this way, then I could experience joy. I would have hope. I would have peace.
Yeah.
And that's just simply not true, right? Like, even in our seasons of waiting, when it doesn't turn out as we would have chosen, we actually can experience his peace. We can have his joy, because the way that is defined and the way we experience that in a broken world looks like this. Like, for joy as the example, joy is what happens in us as we abide in Jesus. It is not contingent on our circumstances. It is not like, hey, we get the thing and then we have joy or happiness.
Right.
The word abide in the original language actually means to be held or kept. Think
Mm,
about that. Like, we are held and kept by the creator of the universe, who has our story the timeline of it, how it will work itself out under his perfect care and control. And so I think it's kind of right sizing our perspective of the timeline that matters.
Mm-hmm.
And in that, a big piece of that is how we view God's character. Like if I'm operating from the worldview of like when that thing comes to fruition, that means God is faithful. The problem is the opposite is also then true, right? Like if it doesn't turn out the way I hoped, well, then that must mean God is bad or that God isn't sovereign or that he isn't in control. And so if we really back
Mm-hmm.
up and go, okay, this is who God is. He is in control. He is holy. He is righteous. He is merciful. He is good. All of those things are unchanging about him
Yes.
because he's immutable,
Yeah.
which is what that word means. It means that he doesn't change. And so if I truly believe that and I live like it's true, then I almost have to unhinge his goodness from my circumstances, right? Like, does he bless us with things this side of heaven? And do we need to see his hand in that? And does that bring us joy? Well, yeah, of course. And his goodness doesn't hinge on me getting the thing I want.
Right.
And that is such an important distinction
Yeah.
in the way that we think and in the way that we live and make decisions and view our circumstances, because the lack thereof of that is, I believe, just leading us to a really dangerous place in culture right now.
And I love that you break down a lot of those barriers that come around that one thought process that we have with equating the thing that we're hoping for, we're longing for, and God answering that prayer to him being good and him being sovereign. And regardless of the circumstances and the timeline and the
Yeah.
thing that we feel at that moment, or even for a season, is the most important thing that we could ever have happen to us.
Yeah.
God is always still good no matter what. As long as we have a breath, God is not
Yeah.
finished with us. And
That's right.
sometimes we don't always see the bigger picture of God and the good things that he has. God actually says that our minds cannot conceive or fathom the
Mm.
good things that he has in store for us. And I have to remind myself of that so many times, because we often think that, well, we know we're the only ones who know the good things that we need to happen for us to be blissfully happy and content and
Yeah.
fulfilled. And the ironic thing is, I think there comes a point in our lives where we look back and reflect and we think, oh, I'm so glad that God didn't answer my prayer right then and there and
Mm.
had me wait because this happened. Or maybe when you did arrive, or that dream did come true, or that prayer was answered, there were so many other beautiful parts of the waiting and the journey that you would not have experienced had God not said, hey, I know you want to run full speed at this, but let's slow it down a little
Yeah.
bit.
Didn't Garth Brooks say it well when he wrote Unanswered Prayers? Like
Yeah,
sometimes God's greatest gift
that's such a good song.
is unanswered prayers. And like I know it's a silly country song, but it really I think is so reflective of how we can always see that in hindsight, right? Like in Garth's example, like he is with his wife at a hometown football game, he sees his ex-girlfriend, and obviously he can see, oh, I have this life with, my wife now. And if I would have stayed with her, my life would have looked so different. So we can always see in the rear view mirror, like, oh, I'm so thankful that you're doing this, Lord, or that you orchestrated it in this way. But I think we also can train our hearts to more quickly recognize, okay, that no, that rejection, that seeming delay in the story playing out, there's a reason for that. And whatever the waiting, the molding, the refining that's happening in us is necessary for wherever God's taking us
That's
next.
right.
And if I'm willing to go, okay, that I'll just run with rejection, that no that I received, that is a gift of clarity that you're giving
Mhm.
me, right? Because that closed door means that you're orchestrating something else for me. So,
Hey, friends. Stopping really quick because I have something so good to share with you today. If you're anything like me, you care about what goes on your skin just as much as what goes into your body. That's why I'm so excited to introduce this month's sponsor, Tubes & Co. Organics. Tubes & Co. is a brand I love because they create all-natural organic skincare and makeup that actually nourishes your skin without the toxic junk. Think clean ingredients, handcrafted goodness, and quality that your skin deserves. And because you're a listener of the Sacred Hustle podcast, Emily Tubes, the amazing founder of Tubes & Co., is giving you 15% off your order. Just use the code Rachel15 at checkout when you shop through the link in the show notes. So if you're ready to ditch the chemicals and switch to luxurious, clean beauty, go check out Tubes & Co. Organics today. Your skin will thank you.
So thank you, God, that I have the clarity that this is not it. And I can shift my eyes and focus towards your chosen path for me, even if that isn't what I would have chosen. So I think the more reps we have at training our hearts to do that, the easier it will become. And I hope the more open our eyes are to how God is at work around us.
I love that. That is so true. And also, when we think of the whole concept of, oh, I'm too late, oftentimes it's even that we just miss the whole mark. We just miss the mark completely. Like,
Yeah.
I remember actually, right as this book was coming out, the cool thing about what God does is he sends us these little, I heard a friend call them God winks one time.
Yeah.
I love that. So I have your book with me. I brought it because it's just
Oh, and you look
absolutely so
so, for people who can't
beautiful.
see Rachel, she
I
has the most
love
beautiful dress on that like perfectly
it.
matches.
Matching.
It's so
And the earrings
beautiful.
that you created for
Oh, I
me,
love it.
like for this whole thing. But I remember the day this book had arrived, and I have been I what has felt like a very, very long season of waiting and longing. My whole life, my dream too was I wanted to get married, have a family, did all of that. I have two incredible boys. And then this goes back to I thought that was it. Like, I have
Mm,
kids, I have my husband.
yeah.
And I started having these dreams of a little girl.
Mm,
And I'm a boy mom right now, which I wouldn't trade them for anything
of
in the
course.
world. But that longing rebirthed. And I found myself right back in that season of waiting. And it's been 7 years now that we have had decided, like, maybe God's not done with our little family. And I thought it was just going to happen so quickly. Like in my
Yeah.
mind, oh, like this is just going to happen like other two. And here I am to this day. And I had one of those moments where another friend who meant well,
Yeah.
but told me like, oh, you're going to be 39 soon. You do realize that after 40, your chances of having another child is just very like all of this doom and gloom. And I thought, oh
Yeah.
my goodness, this ship
Rachel.
is going to sail and I'm going to miss this whole thing. So I would love for you to speak to the woman who can relate to those feelings and maybe feels like
Yeah.
she's missed, like, I should have done this years ago. I shouldn't have waited so long. I missed the moment.
Yeah.
How do we get through that time? What's your
Yeah.
advice?
Totally. Gosh, there's so much I could share. I mean, I'll first say, and you know this, but like the shame, the regret, the lack of control that you feel like you have over the past,
Mm-hmm.
like you have zero control to go back and change decisions that you made,
Right.
or maybe the way you saw a situation 10 years ago. Like there's nothing you can do to change that. So while the regret or the shame or the whatever is real, so the last thing I'm going to do is throw toxic positivity at that. We can do nothing to control the past. And so in the current moment, I think there's a few things we can do. One, those conversations like what you mentioned a moment ago from well-meaning, well-intentioned friends can really be destructive to our
Mm-hmm.
thinking and to our hearts.
Yeah.
And so I just want to first recognize that, right?
Right.
Um, so I think there's some things we can do on the giving and the receiving end of that.
Yeah.
So on the receiving end, like I'm putting myself in your shoes, having that conversation, a couple things. And there's a lot of pre-deciding that we can do before we find ourselves in that moment when somebody makes an off-color comment or asks us a question that makes fear bubble up in our hearts. We can decide how we're going to respond to that before we're put in the position. Now, will our hearts be caught off guard occasionally? Of course. But we can decide, okay, if I'm asked that question, and let's just stick with the having kids example, I could say, you know what, I can't wait for that to be, Lord willing, our season of life. But I would love to share with you what God is doing in my life. And there's a way that we can redirect in a way that's kind and graceful, that doesn't over explain or over justify our season of life, because that's really just not necessary most times.
Right. Yeah.
But yet we do it because we don't know what to say or how to respond. And so we can kind of pre-decide that a little bit.
Yeah.
And I have found that personally to be really helpful. And then the other thing I would say is the moment at the baby shower when we're asked, that off-color question, that is not the moment to process our grief about it. Right? Like, my hope is that you and I have people in our lives that are a safe place for us to go, you know what? I have a baby shower to go to next weekend, and I have the desire to become a mom. I want to show up for my friend well, but like, will you pray for me this week and pray that God would just grant me the joy that I don't feel like exists in my heart for her? Like, I want to show up well for her.
Yeah.
And going to the Lord about that, dealing with the grief about that, having people in your life, your real life, that you can look eyeball to eyeball and say, like, this is a struggle for me and I need you to walk with me in this.
Yeah.
I think we have to be willing to do that. That enables us to show up better in those moments when we're asked that question. So those are a couple things on the receiving end. On the giving end, I think moments like what you just described a moment ago are such great teachers in the type of friend we want to be.
Yeah.
Right? Because when we're asked something like that, it trains our hearts to be more sensitive in the moment when, you're around another friend who wants to have a baby, and that's a desire in her heart, but you have more care and concern for how you talk about it around her.
Yes.
When you have had those moments of unexpected hurt or unintentional hurt yourself.
Yeah.
Right? So I think we can also be a good friend in that way. And I always say, like, be about whatever God is doing in their life. Be about it, talk about it, ask about it.
Yeah.
I just think we can be a good friend in that.
I love that. There's lessons from both aspects. Like, oftentimes when we go through these situations, we're so focused on being the receiver of that
Yeah.
we fail to recognize, what can I learn from this? Not just assuming that they need to learn the lesson.
Yeah.
like we often tend to do, but hey, what can I learn? Because you're 100% right, Rebecca. I have taken so much of those different situations that I have been in, and I, even with raising my own children, and I've thought, I will never, like, God help me, of course, because I'm human and I'll fail, make mistakes, but I never want them to feel that way.
Yeah.
I never want them to experience that, when you're already walking through, like that old saying, like, don't kick someone when they're down.
Yeah.
There's so much truth in that. And sometimes we don't mean to do that with an evil intention, or, oh, I'm going to sit there and just make this worse for my friend,
Yeah. Yeah. But like, nobody is more aware that you're about to turn 40 than you, right? There's nobody that's more aware of that reality than you.
Right.
And so, like, we have to remember that as we're having conversations. Like, nobody lives with the grief of infertility more than your friend walking through infertility. Right. Nobody lives with the grief of the desire to be married more than your single friend in her 30s. So let's remember that and cause that to allow our hearts to care for that person more deeply.
So good. I love that. Thank you for shedding light on this, because it happens so often. I think a lot of times we're just afraid to even talk about these things.
Totally.
Because maybe it steps on our toes a little bit, because we are very impatient. And it's not just us If you look back in the Bible, so many
Yeah.
different situations of people being impatient and oftentimes in our rush to hurry. And I love your tagline, trusting God's timing in a hurry up world.
Mhm.
We just want to hurry everything along. For whatever reason, we so gravitate towards that. And I think God beckons us to slow down. And that's oftentimes why his time is so different than ours. And I'd like for you to talk about the root of urgency
Mm.
for a little bit,
Yeah.
because I feel like women struggle with so many things that men don't like as much as we do. But I know men struggle with
Yes.
things too. But because we are women, let's speak to the women who just feel like they need to hurry up and do all the things. They see their friends or other people that they respect and admire, just their
Yeah.
life looks perfect and amazing, and they're just like, Lord, did you forget me? Have you
Yeah.
forgotten me? God, I'm here. I've been faithful. I have been waiting. I've been serving, and I've given my whole life and my whole heart to you. Why does this other person have everything that I want, and I just want to get there? How do we
Yeah.
talk about that root of urgency?
Yeah. I think that's so important, Rachel. And I mean, I'll first say, like, our culture is built in such a way that it causes us to hurry up all the time. Like, a
Mm-hmm.
couple examples. We have an early flight. We don't want to inconvenience our husband or a friend or whatever. What do? We get an Uber,
Yeah.
right? If we're sick and we want our favorite soup or whatever, a friend doesn't bring it to us and we don't want to inconvenience them. So we order it from Panera and it's at our house
Mm-hmm.
in 15 minutes, right? We have created a microwave society
Right.
that causes everything about our lives to feel urgent, right? Like if we get a text message, it's just assumed like, oh, we need to respond in like the first few minutes or we're going to let that person down or whatever. And like it's okay if you can't respond right away. It's okay if it takes a while to make a decision. It's okay to need people,
Yes.
right? But we have created lives that don't.
Right.
And so, because of that, we then start to view the heavier things of life with the same urgency, right? Like, if I can't even wait long enough to make homemade chicken noodle soup, I need to have it from Panera, then I sure can't wait on the Lord when I'm waiting to have a baby, right?
So
Like,
true.
if I can't do it in the little things, if I can't do it in the
Yes.
insignificant moments of my
I
life,
love
I
that.
sure won't be able to do it in something that's much weightier, right?
Yes.
So we're doing nothing but training our hearts
Wow.
to need urgency. And
Wow.
so I think it's first important that we know that, right? Like what we're probably not going to be able to do is like change the whole world in the way everybody in our culture views urgency. However, we can control what's on our side of the street,
Yeah.
right? And how we view it. And so, I mean, I think there's things we can do to intentionally push back against it. I'll give you an example. I was sick a couple of months ago and I had a dear friend of mine do something for me that like I'm still thinking about it months later. She called me and she said, I was making dinner and I was trying to figure out what I was going to make. And I thought, you know what? I'm just going to make soup. I'm just going to make soup for my whole family and I'll bring Rebecca some. So she said she
Oh,
didn't ask what I needed. She didn't call me and say, like, what's your favorite soup? Is it okay? Can I? None of that. She just said, I boxed up a couple of bowls of soup. It's hot. It's in a Tupperware. I'm on my way to your house. I'll leave it on the doorstep. You don't have to come out. I love you, but I don't need to see you. I hope this blesses you. But it met a practical need that I had. It served me well. And
mm-hmm.
it was just her intentionally choosing to intersect a moment of her life with a need of mine, right?
Yeah.
And I just can't tell you like how far that went with me.
Yeah.
You know, like it was so meaningful to me and it challenged me to find opportunities where I can do that too. And so I think whether it is meeting a practical need or intentionally choosing like, you know what, I'm on the phone with this friend, she really needs me right now. I am feeling anxious because I want to get off the phone and be on to the next thing, but I'm going to force my heart to slow down and I'm going to show up for her and I'm going to take the time, right? It's those small decisions I believe that train our hearts to be able to withstand the longing and the waiting and the heavier things of life,
Mm-hmm.
right? But if we never challenge ourselves to do that, then it's going to feel impossible for us to do it in the more significant seasons.
Yes. You mentioned something. I think I'm going to be thinking about this a lot because I am, as you were talking, in fact, the next time I eat at Panera, I'm going to have to send you a selfie.
Please do.
I
Don't get me
can't.
wrong. Like I love Panera.
I know. I know. I
Yeah.
just think that's so great because
Yes.
that's a challenge though. Like,
Totally.
and I think not that's not any knock on anyone that has done that because we've all created so many of these urgencies that we have a tendency to maybe pass the blame on others or society or the deadlines, the timelines. But my husband's always teasing me about this because I set these deadlines and timelines for myself.
Yes.
And then I am in a complete frantic tizzy because I have just overdone it and I've had all of these unrealistic expectations of how much that I should be filling in. And in that time period, I'm not serving my family well. I'm not serving the
No.
Lord well. I am a complete basket case bundle of nerves, stressed out, hair
Yes.
frazzled, eyes, but like that character
Yes.
you see where, and I'm like, oh, I can relate. That's me. And I have to really reflect and think, why am I, what must the Lord think? Like, why am I doing this? And I feel that longing so deep to slow down. And I think of the simple scripture where he says, wait upon the Lord. Such
Yeah.
a short scripture, wait upon the Lord. And there's so many scriptures about waiting. So I feel like God intentionally wants us to wait and slow down because that is where we do find so many beautiful moments that we miss when we're trying to hurry the thing along.
Yes.
And I
Yes.
really love that you shed light on that and help us to just be real with
Yeah.
ourselves and be honest about what our perception is. It's not a disillusionment. We just need to be real with
Yeah.
how we're going about this whole thing and look at it from the right perspective. And
Yes.
it doesn't make it easier when we recognize that. So it's not going to make the longing go away. It's not going to make us be desensitized to the very real feelings that we're
Yeah.
feeling as we're waiting. But it does make the waiting a little more beautiful.
It does. It totally does. I love that you bring that out because it just changes our perspective in it all.
Yeah.
And that's so important.
Yeah, it is. I was so impacted when I went to the Camp for Creatives because you really create a space for all different stages of life in our writing or creativity or whatever it is that we're doing, whatever that thing is, where we almost forcefully slow down because we
Yeah.
are in just beautiful, the Smokies, in nature, where we're just surrounded by other souls who get it more, like they just
Yes.
can relate to what we're feeling. And I think that's important too, is if you're in a season and you have this waiting and you feel lonely while you're waiting,
Mm,
there's something to be said for seeking out that community that can relate to what you're going through. That can be
totally.
such a healing balm that can be so helpful because then at least we feel like, well, there's someone else in this season with me. There's
Yeah.
someone else who understands and we can encourage one another and community, which is something you just have a beautiful gift for creating community. And I think that more than ever in a city where we're so glued to technology and our phones and just a text message,
Yes.
we need in-person community. And even like you mentioned the homemade soup, as opposed to, yeah, I could easily, like, so easy to just click on Uber and just Uber it to them. But when you take the time
Mhm.
to do something with more intention, that is so impactful. Not that it's
So
not special.
impactful.
If sometimes we just can't, like, hey, if you have
Yeah.
a friend who needs it and you just can't do it, but if you can create space for more of that in your life, we talked about this before we hit record, but love is in the details.
Yes.
And it really is true. When we can
Yes.
notice those details, God actually demonstrated this for us in all of the details that He gives us in the beautiful creation, the colors that He made, the things
Mm,
that He wanted us to enjoy on this earth. He didn't have to do that. right down to the flavors of food and that amazing cup of coffee that we crave every morning. He delights in the details. And I truly believe the more we are rooted in Him and the more we pursue that relationship with Him, we start to notice that God is in the details.
He's
God
so,
is there in the details and in the waiting with us.
yes, he is. I was pulling up some song lyrics that I quote this in the book, and I actually had my friend Heidi Parton sing this song at my launch party for this book
Oh my
last week,
goodness.
which was so fun. But my very favorite Dolly Parton song, of course, I had to bring Dolly into this
Yes,
conversation. I
girl.
love that I got to introduce you to Dollywood for the very first
Me
time, and I can't wait to take you back.
too.
But I love this song, and I think it speaks beautifully to what you're saying. The song is called God's Coloring Book. It's not one of Dolly's most popular songs. I don't hear it talked about often, but here's a couple of the verses. She says, "Today, as I was walking in the fields just down the way, I sat on a fallen log to pass the time away. And as I looked around me, the more that I did look, the more I realized that I'm viewing God's coloring book. I
Mm,
saw a golden ray of sunlight, a silver drop of dew, a soft white floating cloud sailing across the sky of blue, a yellow dandelion, pretty evergreen, and some red and orange flowers growing wild along the stream. The grayness in an old man's hair, the pink in baby's cheeks, the blackness in a stormy sky, the brown and fallen leaves, and the multicolored rainbow stretched out across the sky, and the purple haze at sunset just before the night. And the more I look around me, the more that I do look, the more I realize that I'm viewing God's coloring book."
oh,
So
that is
anytime
so
I see a
beautiful.
sunrise or a sunset, this is my challenge to our friends. The next time you see a pretty sunrise or sunset,
Yeah.
if I have the room to pull over and I'm in my car, I will often pull over and pull up that song and force myself to slow down and just recognize, like,
Mm,
the same God that paints the sky is in control of my life.
yeah.
And sometimes we need to force ourselves to remember those truths when we're
Yes.
waiting.
I love that. I'm gonna go listen to that song.
Oh, it's my favorite song.
When I went to Dollywood, I had always loved Dolly. I mean, I grew up hearing so many of her songs, but I
Yeah.
connected so I had such a different feeling just going to learn about this once again going to the stories, and that's why I'm so grateful that we could have you on the show today, Rebecca, to talk so much more in depth about these concepts. There's nothing like just getting to see your expression, hear your voice, and your smile and just all of the things that have gone into this project. I'm just so honored to be able to tell people about it because I feel like everyone needs to read this book.
Thank you,
So thank you
friend.
for being an instrument that God is using to get this message out there, and for your own seasons of waiting that I know
Yeah.
you're in too. Like we're in
Totally.
this thing together, guys. I think that's
Yeah.
important to recognize as well. It doesn't mean because you authored this book that
I have not
I
figured it out.
know how to do this, guys. Like just take
Absolutely not.
it.
Yeah, absolutely not.
Right. I think people forget, like, hey, we may talk about this a lot, or we might feel like we just went into a whole book about it, but it doesn't mean that it's not lost on us.
Yes.
I know, and I could feel that is you are writing this because you understand it so well. And that means that you have experienced it in your own life and you know that you're going to continue to have those times. But
Yeah.
thank you for making it just feel more beautiful. And even your book cover and the texture of the book, like, everything is so special. So,
Thank you, friend.
how
I'm
can
so
people
grateful.
connect with you more, Rebecca? Where I know you have a lot of different communities, like you mentioned your podcast, Radical Radiance. There's so many things, but let's just recap that a little bit for those who have listened to this
Sure.
episode and just really want more of that community. Where would you like
Sure.
to find you?
Yeah. So, yeah, I'm the most active over on Instagram. My handle is Rebecca George Author. You can grab the book anywhere you like to buy books: Amazon, Christian Book, Barnes and Noble. And podcast, as you said, is called Radical Radiance. So I'd love to have you over there. And all of that is housed on my website at radicalradiance.live.
Amazing. I love this so much. Thank you again for coming on and sharing. Is there any last word of encouragement that you would like to leave our listeners of the Sacred Hustle community today?
Yeah, I wrote this statement in the introduction of the book that always comes to mind when I'm asked this question. And I say, this book is for the hopefuls, the almost but not yets, the crushed in defeat, the stunned by a lack of progress, and the
Mm.
weary woman ready to hang up her jersey. And
Oh,
so that's probably a lot of us listening.
wow.
One of those maybe connects with you. And
Yeah,
so I think, I mean, the title kind of speaks for itself. Like,
yeah,
you are not too late for your life, no matter what the circumstances look like, no matter how you're unsure of how God might show up or provide. You are not too late for the story God is writing for you.
that made me actually tear up just hearing you read that again. It's so beautiful. So thank you for encouraging us all, friends, and I will make sure to link all of this in the show notes for our listeners. And I can't wait to see what God continues to do with this. This is just the beginning.
Thank you, friend.
Yeah.
I'm so
Thank you again
excited.
so
Thank
much.
you.
I loved this conversation today,
Me
Rebecca.
too.
Wow, isn't that just the most beautiful reminder? I don't know about you, but my heart feels a little lighter, a little more grounded, and a whole lot more hopeful after hearing from Rebecca today. If you've ever felt like you've missed your moment or wondered if you're too late to begin again, I hope this conversation reminded you that God doesn't work on our timelines, He works on His. And His timing is always perfect. Rebecca's words were a sacred hug to the part of us that's still waiting, still walking, still trusting. And friend, you are not too late. You're right on time. If this episode spoke to you, would you share it with a friend who needs the same reminder? And be sure to grab a copy of Rebecca's new book, You're Not Too Late. It's one you'll want to keep close by, especially on the days you need a little extra encouragement. So thank you for listening, friends. Until next time, keep pursuing your purpose with peace and keep showing up for your sacred hustle, one faithful step at a time. Bye, friends. Thank you so much for joining me on this episode of the Sacred Hustle podcast. I hope it brought encouragement and inspiration to your day. If you love this conversation, I'd be so grateful if you'd share it with a friend, follow the show, and leave a rating or a review. It helps more listeners find me. And don't forget, you can connect with me anytime at www.rachelerp.com. Until next time, keep balancing purpose, peace, and pursuit in your sacred hustle. See you soon.